Hey everybody, and welcome to the Snaj V Show. I'm incredibly excited. This has probably been something that has been a few months in the making, and I'm incredibly excited to be able to sit here with my mentor, and I feel like I can now consider him my friend, Bedros Keuilian. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Snaj. Thank you for having me, and welcome to HQ again. Yeah.
It's such a pleasure to be in your studio is just, it's beautiful, and everything that you provide is always kind of like the best of the best. But I want to kind of go straight into a couple of things that I love to talk about, and especially with someone of your caliber. I know a lot about you. I've been listening to your podcast. I've been listening to I've been reading the books. I've been following you for a while now. And there's a lot of things that I know about you, but maybe there's a couple of things that people don't necessarily know about you. And I would love to ask you first, one, what do people know about you? And then two, what do people not know about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think, actually, we've done over 400 podcasts for other people, and this is the first time I'm getting asked that question. So I could always remember questions that I hear over and over again. Never heard that one. So I think what people know about me is that I'm an immigrant, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a patriot, and that I'm intense, passionate, intense. Sometimes that intensity gets translated as anger. I can certainly get angry, but it's passion and intensity more than anger. What they don't know about me is that I'm an introvert, not an extrovert. So I had to figure out how to do all this stuff, talk to the masses on video, get in front of thousands of people on stage. That is not factory installed for me. So I'm an introvert. So I had to learn to operate in the extrovert world. I also love to surf, love to play the drums, and really like more one-on-one time with people than a mass group. So those are the things people don't know about me. And probably that are three big charities that I donate to regularly, which is Compassion International. We've got 97 kids adopted through Compassion International. Toys for Tots. We spend about $250,000 every Christmas at Target down the road here, and buy gifts, toys for kids who otherwise would not have a Christmas that year. And then Shriners Children's Hospital. That's the longest charity that I've been donating to for 13 years now. We've given them over 7 figures now, and they help families whose children need medical procedures, but their families can't afford it. And so they are literally given money by citizens. They never take any money from the government, so it's all charity based. And I do that because it also heals the young kid in me. They're all of them are kid-based charities for a reason. And so, but I don't talk about that on social media much, not because I just don't want to beat my chest, but since you asked, that's something I do. And if people watching this want to donate to those causes, it would mean a lot to me.
Awesome. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. I think based off even just that action alone shows that there is this such a compassionate and empathetic side of you, which kind of taps into one of my main topics. And I'm sure this is going to go so many different directions, but perception versus reality is just so great. And I want to share my first introduction with you when we were at one of your events, and I came over to you and I introduced myself, and you put your hand out to grab mine, and then you grabbed my hand with your other hand, and you looked me square in the eye. I was like, holy moly, is this real? It was such a profound moment that I was like, I think I just met a gentleman. Truly.
Wow. I'm honored. Wow.
And
I've never blushed before. Thank you.
No, but I wanted to share that with you because I remember that moment so well. I've told that story several times up until this point, because it was more so the way that you acknowledged me, not only just as a female, but as another human being.
Sure.
So I really appreciated
Thank
that.
you.
And it instantly made me think, this guy's not as hard as he thinks. He's all tough on the outside. So it was pretty cool to experience that. But then I felt like, okay, so there's all of this intensity that you talk about.
Yeah.
But then you show a very different side as well, one-on-one, like you said.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I know that there's probably an inner monster, as we all have. But tell me more about the perception versus the reality.
Well, I think you said it best, and I think the only way I could add to that, to be very frank with you, is I've got a friend named John Lovell. He runs a YouTube channel called Warrior Poet Society. Huge channel, 1.6 million subscribers, and he was a Army Ranger. And you look at the term warrior poet, like two very conflicting terminologies, going back to perception versus reality. And the man was a warrior. He went and he had to deal with very bad people in very bad parts of the world who were killing innocent people, and he handled business. But as he says on his channel, he says most men aspire to be lions, but then they come home as a lion, and there's not a lot of room for that at home. And he goes, what a shame that you could be a lion out there, but you don't show the lamb to your family, to your kids, your soft, gentle side, to people who don't necessarily need to see that violent side of you. And all of my life growing up, teens and 20s, all the way to mid-20s, I was pretty violent because I came to the United States at the age of 6. We lived in Section 8 housing, which is government-assisted housing, in Santa Ana, California, not the prettiest parts of town, and a lot of gangs. And when you grow up in that environment and you're the foreigner, you don't speak English, you get picked on, you get beat up, and they take your bike. I remember the first time they stole my bike. It was like a cheap, broken down bike. My dad bought it at a garage sale within the first 6 months of us being here. And I went home crying. And then my dad gave me a beating. And so I learned that violence is the answer to a lot of things. Like, they were violent with me and took my shit. And then I got home and my dad was violent with me. I love my dad to pieces. He risked his life to bring us here. But I can imagine now, looking back, he was 45 years old, 3 kids, a wife. It would be like if we went to the moon, right? It's the only way to describe it. It wouldn't even be like if we went to a different country. We would have to leave to go to another planet to have that same experience. Because today we've got Google Translate where we can translate different languages. Like, you'd have to go to a different planet. So he had a lot of stress, I can imagine. But anyway, so I realized, okay, violence might be the answer to a lot of things. It gets things done. So as I grew up, you start hanging around with those guys from gangs and unsavory characters. Soon I found myself carjacking because it made money. You steal cars that are in high demand, you take it apart, you sell those parts to an auto body shop, they give you money for it. And soon that led to home invasion robberies. That's not who I wanted to be, but I found that violence paid off. Violence got me respect, and violence kept me safe. And so when all the tool that you have is a hammer, everything becomes a nail. And so that's who I was. But then as I started to become a personal trainer, kind of in my 20s is when I was transitioning. I would be a personal trainer, and you're working with personal training clients. You know this from the fitness industry. They're pretty affluent people. They have money, especially if they're doing one-on-one personal training. They're more civilized. And I realized very quickly that, man, these people really carry themselves differently. Like, they are respected because they're not feared. They are truly respected. They are appreciated for what they do. They come with the giving hand. I want some of that. I want that kind of respect, not respect from fear. And so early on, one of my mentors was Jim Franco, older gentleman, owned a big business. I saw how he treated his people. I was like, wow, he's very fierce the way he runs his company, but he's so kind and gentle and empathetic and compassionate. It was the first time I was experienced to the idea of being a lion and a lamb. And we all have it within us, but when showing the lamb gets you beat up and saying, hey, I'll share my toys, and they just steal it, soon you don't want to be the lamb anymore, you just want to be a lion. And so I think that was the dichotomy I was dealing with. But so I certainly have the streets in me in terms of the street smarts, in terms of that edge. And I'm glad. It's also helped me solve a lot of problems in life. Like, the whole pandemic that we dealt with, to me, was nothing. Like, I've gone through worse. Bring it on. But I can tell you that my relationships have been better when I can show my soft, compassionate, empathetic side, because people are more likely to respect you out of love and compassion versus just by fear. And so I think there's a high level of healing that needs to happen. Like we all have this hurt child within us. Something happens, whether it's mom or dad or society or gangs or, someone abused you physically, sexually, mentally. And I can check off every single one of those boxes, ironically. And I think that all of that begins to harden our heart. And soon you begin to show up very differently to people, kind of like metaphorically with your fists up. But then as you start healing, and part of it is age. I always believe age and experience create wisdom. And at 48, as I got into my late 30s and 40s and did a lot of the self-work, work with a therapist, I realized, you know what, I can hug a man and say I love you, and there's nothing weird about that. Yeah. In my 20s and early 30s, it was like, see ya, bro, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very different. And to hear another man say I love you to me, like, feels good. Feels good. And it's like a brotherly thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And so now I try and be the messenger of that. Yeah.
I love it. And, I did some therapy as well myself, and I think that a lot of people see you as going to therapy as there's something wrong with you, mm-hmm. but really you're just trying to heal. It's a different way of healing and a different method of really diving deeper into things that you don't even know how to. But I'm sure you get this a lot where people probably still see you as that hardened person, that hurt and hardened person. How do you combat that?
Well, probably the same way like I did with you. I just show up with love and compassion, and unless someone wrongs me, it used to be that I show up as the hammer, and unless you win my trust, then I might let my guard down. Now it's the opposite. I just assume we all have a good heart, but we all come from a place of trauma, because statistically speaking, 1 out of every 3 people have dealt with some kind of trauma, physical, mental, sexual abuse, that kind of, again, gets them fists up. And so I just assume that you're a good person, you have the best of intentions, so I'm going to come with love, compassion, and empathy. And typically I can get your guard down a lot sooner that way than coming as the intense hammer. Yeah. I certainly have that as a tool, but I use it way less than I ever had to. The reality is we all have a tool belt, and the more tools we can put on there, listening, like active listening, right? To be able to like lean in and go, okay, I get it, I understand. To be able to reiterate to someone what they just said. Oh, what I'm hearing you say, Snesh, is blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh shit, this guy's really listening. Active listening, communication, setting expectations, boundaries, all those things are tools that if we don't have, we begin to use the 1 or 2 tools that we have. And it doesn't always get us through life. So for me, I come with love, compassion, and unless they prove otherwise, that's the only way I'll show up.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I know that you do so much work with the project, and it's just such a phenomenal experience for all those men. And I'm sure, it's something that I would never fully understand. But I think that it's incredible that you do that. I just kind of want you to give us like a very quick summary of what the project does to create this Sure. version that you're talking about.
Yeah. So you and I have so much in common in terms of trauma, and then we actually actively, fitness has been a big healing component for us, right? We were both in the fitness industry, and then we both went and sought out therapy because the brain that got me here is not going to get me where I want to be. So let me ask an expert to help me through my trauma, to heal. And so with that said, that took a lot of work, right? Like it wasn't overnight.
Oh no, it's months.
And so as you can imagine, most people want the results and they want it fast. And most people are reluctant to go work with a therapist. And most people are reluctant to want to talk about the stuff that happened to them. So I figured, all right, what took me several years to fully heal and evolve, if I can do that for men in a short window of 75 hours, about just over 3 days, but lure them into this experience, 75-hour straight experience, by saying, look, a Navy SEAL is going to put you through some really cool training programs. You're going to be pulling a truck as a team. You're going to be doing ice baths. You're going to be in the ocean doing, SEAL training type stuff. And then the Marines going to put you through different workouts, and we're going to do hikes with logs and stuff and work as a team, problem solve, communicate, etc. Like really cool, bonding, manly stuff. But hidden inside that 75 hours is a 4-hour window where we don't show on the videos that we put on social media. And that is where we have a journal similar to this, and we take them through an exercise called toxic cognitions. And I walked them through, hey, this is what happened to me as a kid. I was molested by 2 older boys in Armenia over and over again. And here's what it did to me in terms of breaking trust. I had zero trust for men ever since that. I had a chip on my shoulder. I felt broken, unlovable, unworthy. And so I write down and read off what I wrote, and then they do it. And I'm taking them through this exercise. Whatever trauma took place in their life, how it shows up in their life, how it makes them feel, and then what levels of self-sabotage or limiting beliefs it's created. Because without a doubt, there's self-sabotage or limiting beliefs, what I call a glass ceiling. They're pushing up against a glass ceiling and don't feel like they can break through. A lot of it is subconscious. And so we go through that, and then you see grown men crying and falling apart, and for the first time ever reading through their journal with these men who they just met, 35 hours ago. And we bake that 4 hours in after hour number 30, 32, because we need these strange men to bring their guard down, work as brothers in group environment, to pull the truck, to move the logs, to go through the experiences. And soon you start hearing them calling each other brother. Hey, I got you. We're going to do this together. And soon you see that when we fatigue them and they work as a team, that they are ready to now go through that exercise. So the project really is a healing experience for men that is very unorthodox, but it's very physically demanding, but also emotionally and mentally taxing, because as you know, when you go through therapy, I've walked out of Kevin's office. Kevin was my therapist many a times, just feeling like I'm walking through molasses, right? Do you remember those feelings where you just feel heavy, you feel like you're just walking through sludge, and sometimes that feeling lasted days because you just gutted yourself, your emotions, and for the first time ever, you acknowledged what happened to you. And so that's what we do with the project with these men. And after the 75 hours, the brotherhood continues for 12 months of coaching, mentorship, masterminds. And but there's one catch. At any time during the 75 hours, they can quit by ringing the bell. And if they quit, they lose their money, and they lose access to that 12-month mastermind that follows up.
Yeah, wow. I was fortunate to meet some of these guys that had graduated the project. Yep. This was last year, and you can see it. Like, you can see it in the way that they stand, the way that they introduce themselves, and when they talk about a little bit about their story, it's almost like they're talking about a very different person. Yeah. But it's really them, 2 years ago or whenever it was prior to the project. So I thought that was really amazing, and it would be amazing to create some form of project style for females out there, because one thing that I do find, and I remember seeing this on a story or a post or something, where there was a woman that said, where can we find all these men? And your response to that was so good. It was, why don't you be the type of woman to attract them? Yeah. Because there isn't enough women out there who are confident, who are willing to set the boundaries and, speak up. And a lot of the time I find that, if you're straightforward, if you're to the point, if you stand tall, you may be considered a bitch, know? Yeah. Whereas if a guy does it, he's considered a man. And I feel like sometimes there's just this misleading misperception that's out there for females, because they think that if they act strong, they're not acting like a lady, Can
I explain why that might be, though?
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That is the perception, and that is because, let's face it, majority of men out there right now are confused about what masculinity is, what chivalry is, what being a gentleman is. They're afraid to hold the door open for someone because she might say, I could do it myself. And like, oh my God, I'm sorry, right? Men have literally told me this. Like, I don't know if I should open the door or not. So I just kind of do the semi-open, but it's closing, but I'm not. I'm like, dude, that must be tough, huh? I go, there was a time that I was driving through a parking lot. A lady had a flat tire. I rolled down my window. Ma'am, can I help you with that? She's like, no, I could do it myself. I go, are you sure? She goes, yes. I go, awesome. Now, it was daylight. She was in a Target shopping center. I knew there was no chance of her getting mugged or murdered. Off I drove off. If in the next hour I saw someone again with a flat tire, another woman, I'd ask the same question. Her response would not prevent me from being the man that I'm supposed to be. But since most men have been brainwashed these days, and most women, by the way, through the act of massive feminism, have been taught that, hey, you're supposed to do it all yourself. So, and not realizing that, because, hey, did it feel good when I shook your hand the right way and made eye contact?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it feel great if I opened the door? Not that you can't do it, you can, but you are a lady and you deserve that. And I certainly hope that, if we're friends and something happens, if I need a soft spot, I'm not going to go to one of my guy friends. I'm probably going to go to one of my, friends who are a woman who I understand me better. I might go to my wife. I might go to my sister. I might go to a friend who's a woman who could understand and be like, hey man, I can hear you, because women are naturally factory installed with that, and men have their own factory installed traits. But since most men are confused about their masculinity and who they're supposed to be, they get intimidated by women that are confident and who earn as much as them, if not more. And but these women still reach out to me and say, I still would like a man who could be a gentleman, who can make the decision on where we're going to eat and, open the door for me, etc. But it takes a very confident man. So when I believe probably 20, maybe 25% of men are that type of confident men, majority of men, therefore, see women like you described as bitches and they're intimidating. When in reality, if that guy was more confident, so I always tell men, hey, you want to attract a woman who's, like my wife's an alpha woman, like who's confident, who's capable, who's like, she raised 2 amazing kids and now she's going back getting her PhD in psychology. Like, how does that sound? Like, I go to the project, she doesn't blow me up when I'm gone for 75 hours, like the sky is falling, because she takes care of shit. She's the CFO of my companies. Like, holy hell, right? My wife would intimidate most men. I find that very attractive because I am the type of man that she is attracted to. And so it's narrow pickings, unfortunately, but that's why we're all out there doing the work and hoping that we can flip it on its ear, that there'll be more confident men and more women who can attract the type of men, that type of man, without belittling them, without treating them like you're my little boy. TV shows haven't done any justice with showing every man as a goofball doofus who can't figure it out.
Yeah. Right?
So there's what I call the opposition, the system, big media, government, etc., that is trying to separate all of us, men from men, women from women, men from women, etc., in every way possible, because if we are not a united tribe, we cannot defend against our freedom of speech and our rights and our liberties. And I believe that we all have a duty as strong humans to be influential on every person you come in contact with, just like I plan on being influential with every person I come in contact with.
Yeah. And I think the more we do find these women who maybe do want to do things on their own, it should encourage men to match the level rather than try and one-up them, but just match. And I think that's what's so profound about your relationship, is that you guys are constantly matching each other's level in different ways, though. Yeah. In your way and in her way. I feel like more people need to understand that, and that it's okay. It's okay to have someone open the door for you if you're going to go and help them in a different way. Yeah. It's just it's almost like there's a I have to beat you, I have to be better than you.
Yeah.
So I would love to know your difference between your kind of concept of arrogance versus confidence, because it seems like, how do you differentiate?
Well, I think arrogance actually is the highest form of insecurity. When someone is insecure, when they are not confident, they will show up with arrogance. They'll be loud, they'll beat their chest, they'll proclaim this is how things are. If someone is confident, you can almost feel that energy off of them. Like, I can walk into a room and I could not say anything and just kind of stand there, and somehow people end up, without even knowing who I am, will end up kind of leaning towards me, circling around me, getting to wanting to get to know me. And it's probably, I found, because of how I carry myself. We all give off an energy. Confidence is someone that has stacked so many wins that they have an undeniable amount of proof that they make a promise and keep a promise. They have an undeniable amount of proof that they are willing to do the work required to produce the outcome desired. Where someone who is arrogant has quit on their dreams, has broken promises to themselves and others, and so they secretly dislike themselves because they're not congruent with the man or woman they want to be. And so they come with this loud, arrogant voice. And so the dog that barks. I'm never afraid of the dog that barks out loud because I know that it's afraid and it's barking for that reason. I'm afraid of the dog that's just quietly looking at me. What is that motherfucker thinking? Right?
I literally have one of each of those.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
All right, and it's the female that barks. The male is very sit and they're quiet. So
There you go.
That's so ironic. I like that.
It's that stoicism that it's like, okay, you know that person or animal is not to be fucked with. You know what I mean? There's a energy that a person carries with confidence when they've accomplished stuff, they've checked off boxes in their life, the way they roll in versus someone who might roll in with arrogance, loud, their car parked at the front of valet, blingage on them. It blows me away because I could look at someone immediately and sniff them out, whether I'm dealing with someone who's confident or arrogant within seconds.
Have you been called arrogant before?
Never.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe I've just been lucky.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I've been called many other things, because especially through social media.
Yeah.
Because you look at a 30-second clip or a 60-second clip of the project where we're going off at someone and they're like, "You guys are fucking assholes. You shouldn't treat men that way." It's like, let me also show you the 4-hour clip where we're crying together and there's snot coming out of our nose and we're crying. So you know what I mean? It's just that. Yeah. So you get judged on 15, 30-second, and 60-second clips on who you are.
Yeah.
And so, but we also realize that's the type of footage that gets the attention and the eyeballs we need to get more men into the project. But all that also comes with a high level of judgment, which I've been fresh out of fucks where judgment is concerned.
Yeah, and there's so much on social media. It's like a world of judgment now.
Big time. Big time.
I love that. So what would be 3 things that you would, I guess, either tell an unconfident person, someone that isn't confident, what would be 3 things that you would tell them to do?
Thing number 1, picture the body that you want in terms of the amount of muscle, the amount of fat you want to carry, how lean you want to be and athletic you want to look. Picture that and then reach for that. Whether it's hiring a fitness coach, a nutritionist, or watching YouTube videos and figuring it out. Because someone who is willing to take their body and change it through exercise and nutrition is someone who's utilizing, this, you're an athlete turned fitness expert. Like, if you are willing to transform your body, 1, it's never going to be overnight. So 1, delayed gratification. What a great thing to have.
Yes.
Because the only thing better than dopamine is it's that other chemical, not endorphins. There's dopamine, and then there is serotonin. Serotonin is goals accomplished over a long period of time. I'd rather get serotonin hits because I took the time to transform my body over months and years. So 1, transform your body and become the idealized man or woman that you look up to and admire. Number 2, start keeping promises to yourself. So if you hit the snooze button in the morning, that means you don't keep your promise. You set the alarm the night before to wake up at a certain time. You hit the snooze button, you broke a promise. If you're constantly breaking a promise to yourself, what you're doing is you're eroding your reputation with yourself, right? And so what if you can actually build your reputation with yourself by keeping that promise? And then saying, all right, I'm going to wake up and then have my coffee and a protein shake, and having a coffee and a protein shake and not a bagel with cream cheese. Keep those small promises to yourself. When people think I have to do something big in order to win. No, the micro promises, my morning routine is never hit the snooze button. Already that's a W, I got to win. Drink 30 ounces of water. Well, I made it easy for myself. I brought it upstairs with me the night before, big 30 ounces of water. So I chug like that, and I got 2 wins within 30 seconds of my feet hitting the ground. Send out 3 gratitude text messages to 3 people in my life that I appreciate, 3 random people. Can knock that out real quick. And then after I shower, I go downstairs and I crack my laptop open. For the next 2 hours, I work on meaningful work that gives me meaning and makes me money. I'm not scrolling social media, feeling like I'm missing out on things, because everyone's posting the best highlight reels of their life on social media, yes, making us feel like we missed out. Instead, I have a list, my GSD list, get shit done list that I'm working off of. And I know that by 9 a.m. I'm driving to my gym. And that means, again, so By 9 a.m., I've already kept like 6 or 7 promises to myself. Stack that over weeks, months, and years. See how well you have in terms of confidence. So those are the 2 things. And the third thing I would say is to serve others. Like, confident people are servant leaders. Selfish people are very insecure. Like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? When was the last time, like, you put on the shirt? I always say, when you wake up every morning, you metaphorically have one of 2 shirts you can wear. One shirt says, how can I serve you? The other shirt says, what can you do for me? Most people are always putting on the shirt that says, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? How about you? Right? Like, what if you actually showed up as a servant? As it turns out, if you want to fight off anxiety and depression, if you worked out and you delayed gratification, consistency, discipline, look at all the traits you're developing just by working out and eating right, developing the body that you want. If you kept the promises to yourself, wow, what a reputation I built with myself. And then instead of selfishly, like, what could the world do for me, actually serving others, you go, you know what? I felt so good to help people. Yeah. And before you know it, you're confident, you're not dealing with anxiety, you're not dealing with depression, and you realize that you're an actualized human being instead of a human animal that is impulsive and reacts emotionally to things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's super good that you have those things. I would love to share just one book. I've read this book, and I'm sure you've read it, but I want to share your kind of your quick take on it. But it's Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and I love Napoleon Hill and just everything about him. But just kind of like your take on that book and what, I guess, what it did for you as well.
So I don't even know how I discovered the book, but I know I discovered the year after it came out, and it came out in 2011. In 2012 is when I discovered it. Interestingly enough, you know when it was written, right?
Yeah.
1936.
Yes.
The book was written in 1936, and Napoleon Hill had another book that came out that everyone knows about, which is Think and Grow Rich, right? And so Think and Grow Rich was his second book. His first book was Outwitting the Devil, and his wife says, please do not publish this. In 1936, he goes, fine. And his estate says, we're not going to publish this until everybody in the Hill family is dead. So in 2012 or 2011, finally the book gets published. That book is more accurate about what's happening in the world today than it ever was. Because in the book, Napoleon Hill, as you know, he corners the devil, and he's able to get the devil to admit on how he uses fear and vices and addictions and doubt and the school system and churches and politics to kill creativity, to control the minds and hearts of humanity, to stifle dreams. And you realize, holy crap, that is happening today more than ever. There's a system designed to literally break that bright, beautiful light bulb on top of everybody's head, where it's like, I've got an idea and I'm creative and I want to explore. Crack. Go be a lawyer. Go be an accountant. Go be a pipe fitter. Go be a plumber. Like, that's what life is meant to be. Yeah, go do all that stuff. Make just enough money to get by, not enough money to experience the world. Pay your taxes into the system to keep the system running, and be conditioned like everybody else to pull everyone down when they have a dream and an ambition. And in fact, 2005, I went on a cruise for the first time, not because I had the money. I was broke then. My wife's family took us on a family cruise to Alaska. We saw some dude who was catching crabs, like he was crab fishing and putting them in a bucket. And one of these ambitious crabs started to crawl on top of all the rest and started to reach up, kind of grabbing the rim of that bucket and pulling itself up. And I was like, sir, your crab's about to make a getaway. And he didn't even look at me. He said, with his back to me, he said, watch what happens next. As this ambitious little crab starts trying to free itself and escape, all the other crabs down there at the bottom of the bucket reach up, grab it, and pull it right back down. And I realized in that moment that we all have these crabs in our lives that want to shit on our dreams and poo-poo on our vision and not encourage us towards our ambitions because it is threatening to them. And that man explained to me, he goes, it's factory, and he didn't say factory installed, but it's instinctive for these crabs to do that to one another. Well, with humans, we've been conditioned to do that. And Napoleon Hill really talks about how the devil uses fear, doubt, vices, insecurities, specific organizations from schools to churches to politics to really limit our happiness and our growth. And there are things that we can do to break out of that. But that also comes with, as we talked about earlier, judgment, pushback. Sometimes you will have to isolate yourself and edit relationships just so that you can live that path, because it is scary to the people around you who can't understand why you're doing it, or do understand why you're doing it, but don't have the desire to do it themselves because they're lazy. They don't have confidence to pull it off. And so it doesn't feel good to them. So they go, they secretly hope that you fail. And that's unfortunate, but that's the human condition.
Yeah. So is that what your lessons were coming out of that book?
Those were all my lessons from that. Yeah. What were yours?
I think a lot of it was that coupling that and packaging that together was taking responsibility for yourself, for your life, for your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. And it's very easy to get negative. It's very easy to really dive deeper into a thought and just let it spiral and let it control us. And I feel like so many times it's easier to just quit on something than to go through it and actually push through and have the faith, right? Have the faith to believe that you are destined for more, you can do more, and you're capable of more. But it takes so much more willpower to follow that through and live that out. And a lot more action. And action is scary for most people. So when I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so eye-opening. It's basically black and white for me. It's like night and day. Which one do you want? Do you want to live in the night, live in the day? So you can either choose the light and just whatever happens, happens, and you can try and fail, or you can live in the night and you're never going to actually know what it was all about.
Right.
So I really liked that, and I remember listening to some of the stuff that you've put out there, and you talked about that book and you talked about him, and it just goes to show how much your level of thinking is just so great, and it does come from the wisdom and experience that you've kind of just done your whole life, and through all of your stories, I think it's just so amazing to hear that. So I want to kind of just give you freedom to just kind of share anything else for the remainder of this little segment.
Yeah. I think the bottom line, when I look at your trajectory in life, when I look at my trajectory in life, I realize that most everyone else's trajectory is pretty similar. You don't have to be, you're a pretty damn good athlete playing soccer. I was never an athlete. I embraced fitness because 11th grade, I wanted to ask Nakaya to the prom the following year. So I was like, if I can get in shape, if I can stop being a fat fuck, I'm going to ask Nakaya to the prom. She's going to say yes, right? I was driven by asking a young girl to the prom. And it doesn't have to be fitness. All the human conditions are this, unjust things have happened to you, things that suck. Maybe you were abused, you were molested, you were told that you're a foreigner, you were told that you don't fit in. Whatever those unjust things are, and whatever our parents, grandparents, teachers told us, think about this, you're born and your parents are like, shush, be careful, watch out. You're supposed to be seen and not heard. Here, wear this. This is your favorite color. With me, they were like, oh, you've always been clumsy. I grew up thinking I was supposed to be clumsy. So I imagine as a child, maybe I fell 1 or 2 times, but somehow they decided that I was clumsy. And so I always imagine that all of us, the moment you're born, you're given this book of life. Since we're babies, you and I can't write what our story is. Others begin to write our story by transferring their fears and doubts on us, right? If you have grandparents that come from the Great Depression, they're probably going to tell you, don't take risks, watch out with that business, don't make that investment, you never know what might happen, don't trust banks, put your money under your mattress. Well, sure, you come from a generation that was scary. If I operate that way, I will just live an average life, a mediocre life. And so, people are writing in our books, instilling their fears, their doubts, their uncertainty on us. And then you've got the people that abuse us, call us names, bully us, whatever. So you got that story that I'm hurt, I'm broken, I don't deserve love, I'm a piece of shit, whatever. And then people oh, you're chunky, you're big boned, you're clumsy. You were never been that smart. School's never been your thing. So you just barely get by, D's and C's in school. But at some point, you got to take the pen back, right? And you got to realize that book of life has so many blank pages left. And you could actually start writing how your story goes. But what we often do is we just go here. We just keep passing the pen along to other people, and you tell me how I'm supposed to be. And we look back and we go, oh, that's right. They said I was clumsy. They said I was stupid. They said I'm supposed to be broke. I'm supposed to hide my money. I'm not supposed to invest. I'm not supposed to take risks. If you take the pen back and start writing your story, you can massively transform your life. And then during the project, we have this thing where we're always scanning these guys when they're crawling the pit. You know, they're crawling with their backpack on and this giant hammer that they carry, and they're crawling for 400 yards. And we can tell, we always bring that bell with us everywhere we go that they can ring and quit. We want to make it very easy for them to quit. And we can tell who's looking at the bell, who's thinking about, who's negotiating the idea of quitting. And when they are, I'll go and start talking to them and Papa Bear them and say, hey, listen, I see you're looking at the bell. The idea of quitting is great because you don't have to go through the suffering anymore. But if you do, you might have regret. So what if you think about quitting after this evolution? And hopefully they can just postpone that thing until the 75 hours are over. But I share this with you because then at some point, that guy will just flip the switch. You can look at him in his eyes and he's just like looking at you like he's hard as nails. He's thinking, bring 75,000 hours. Nothing can break me. Like there's a flip the switch moment that happens where you just like in the zone, in the flow. And I always say they end up taking instructor Steve's and instructor Ray's soul, because Steve and Ray, Navy SEAL and Marine, they're very, very hard on these guys by design. I want them to be hard. I want them to break them down and dismantle them. But I also tell these guys at some point, you can own their soul. You can make it impossible for them to dismantle you, impossible for them to break you down. You can flip the switch. And when I see that, I don't even look at those guys anymore because I know they're going to graduate at hour 75. And so that is the story, that how quickly you can flip the switch and decide, I am no longer a victim. I'm a victor. I am to be loved. I am to have success. I'm to have an abundant life. And I'm supposed to find someone who's equally yoked as me, and we are going to dominate this fucking world together. What if everybody took the pen back and rewrote their story that way? They can. It's scary, but we should.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I feel like that just kind of taps on to like complacency is just not an option, you know, and just like settling is so unnecessary.
It is. I mean, think about, and by the way, I get the beauty of complacency and convenience and comfort. Those three C's together, complacency, convenience, and comfort. Like we naturally seek that out. It's raining today. I don't like it. I still went to the park and put my 3 miles in. I was wet, which is why I was late to this, right? I had to come upstairs, shower, etc. I want comfort. I don't want it to be cold. I don't want it to be wet when I'm exercising. But the reality, it is. So we're always seeking out comfort, convenience, complacency. But it is also the thing that sucks us into mediocrity. And I can tell you this, mediocre people, average people end up living having this looking back on their life when they're on their deathbed with regret. And that is the last thought that I want to have when I die, is regret, and that I didn't live the life that God or the higher power put me on this planet to live. Like, what a sad way to take your last breath and go.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's huge. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared today. To find Bedros, you can find him on Instagram, Bedros Keuilian. You can also go to his website, bedroskeuilian.com. His YouTube channel is amazing, and it's just filled with so much great content. And then Man Up, your book,
yes,
which I really want to make sure that I tap on that because I love that book. I was fortunate to get 2 signed copies of those, so I would highly suggest people check that one out, as well as your podcast, because that is definitely something that is worthwhile, and you share it every week. So I love the consistency in that. So thank you so much for being here today and giving me the time to be here with you. I'm super grateful. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, guys.